Good afternoon, Nick. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit and speak with me. I know I have a ton of questions about, all the legalities that kind of go into part with businesses. And I know a lot of other people will have the same questions. So before we begin, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do for a living?
So again, thanks for having me. About me, I'm born and raised in Miami. So literally from birth, been here. Probably intend on never leaving, unless something crazy happens. But Miami, born and raised. My family originally from Ohio. So I have a very American, background. Um, I went to school, high school here, Corey Senior High School. And then I went to undergraduate at FIU, so also stayed home. And then law school, I went to St. Thomas. So never left, always stayed home. So yeah, and so now what I do is I have my own corporate, law practice. So I my focus is primarily on businesses. Um, a lot of times new businesses and a lot of times helping businesses that are already established and either didn't do something right or want to get rid of a partner or want to add partners, want to bring in money, want to get rid of money, all the different types of scenarios that you can think of. So sometimes, unfortunately, that involves litigation, right? When people get to the point where they hate each other and there's no other recourse but, hey, we're gonna go sue and we'll let the courts deal with it. So I do that, and the other part of my practice is real estate. So we do a lot of real estate transactions. Also litigation with real estate. So a lot of times things happen in real estate. We don't think of it on a daily basis because we go to our house, we pay our mortgage, and we think, hey, nothing ever goes wrong. But things go wrong frequently. So that's primarily what my practice is. And yeah, my background is, very typical, normal, Miami guy. Born and raised here. My family's all here. The only one who's not here is my dad. He lives in Gainesville. But besides that, pretty normal life. Was never really in too much trouble. Besides, normal trouble stuff, and that's about it.
That's
Boring otherwise.
No, that's not boring. Great that you stayed here because you know the Miami culture very well, and it's nice and refreshing that you stayed close to home. So I think there's definitely something to be said for that. I did want to touch upon something that you said about what you do. You talked about helping businesses get up and running. So from your perspective,
Right.
what does it mean to start a business, right? Like I can just get up and say, I want to start Mills Knows Bills, but from your side of it, what does that look
Well, from my side of it, it's the very typical lawyer answer of it depends,
like?
right? So a lot of people come in and they're like, hey, I've already done X, Y, Z, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe let's start over. Maybe we got to start over. Maybe they've done everything right. You know what I mean? So it really depends on the type of business A that comes in. Someone, like your business, or for a gym, for instance, someone like that, they need to set up the corporate structure, right? So a lot of times people think that's, unfortunate Miami style is go on Facebook, put, Mills Knows Bills, and you're like, hey, I'm a business. You know what I mean? That's very Miami style to open your business. Um, very legal, not really. You know what I mean? So is it illegal? Not really, but for tax purposes, you probably want to, have a registered business.
Hmm.
So, in Florida, that requires, going on Sunbiz, putting in the name, making sure no one else has the name, and kind of going through the steps that Sunbiz requires you to. A lot of people, do take that additional step besides just making the Facebook, and they make a Sunbiz. So some people are starting to go, in the right direction, but a lot of people, that's not opening a business for a lot of people. Okay. Because if you have partners, then you need to, document a partnership agreement. Whether that's if it's an LLC, you're going to do an operating agreement. If it's a corporation, you're going to do a shareholder agreement. There's bylaws, there's different documents that can be set up. And everything just depends on what it is. But for me, it's really papering, that the business is official and that whatever agreement you have between the partners is on paper. Because, there's a lot of horror stories that, you and your cousin go open a business and you guys think, hey, we love each other. We're cousins, we're never going to fight. Right. But one day you and your cousin disagree with the direction of the business and where it's going. And guess what? You guys never papered anything, right? So now you can't get rid of your cousin. So what's your cousin wants out, or your cousin doesn't want out and wants to kick you out, however, the scenario is. And now guess what? You have no paper to dictate what goes on. So you got to literally depend on whatever Florida statute gives you, which is kind of like, hey, I hope you did a K1, right? When you guys were taking money out of the company, I hope you did your taxes, and it says, hey, I own 50, you own 50. That's kind of your, let's close the business and get 50-50 of whatever's left. Most businesses don't have 3 million in cash sitting there. So it's not like, oh, you leave with 1.5 and I leave with 1.5 and we're good, so, and there's a lot that goes into that. So I think papering the deal is really something that's important, especially here, especially if you're going to be dealing with another person, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're opening the company and you're solely on your own, papering up the deal probably isn't as important as if you're opening with someone else, right? Is it equally important? Yes, but it's definitely more important if you're dealing with other people. So,
Okay.
for me, that's what it means, is really papering it and making sure that it's legitimate.
Sounds like a lot of, like you said, paperwork, a lot of legal jargon, a lot of
Yeah.
checking off of the boxes that, we normally just wouldn't think of. And I'm glad you talked about, something that's solely owned versus something that has a partner, because I do think that's, really important to understand the differences and why it's important to
Yeah.
things written down and have those contracts in place. And you did start mentioning this about, there's different ways to set up a business. I know there's LLCs and S corps and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not as well versed as you are. So can you tell us a little bit about, each one and which one you think is the best, maybe?
I mean, again, very lawyerly answered. It's going to be that it depends. Okay. And a lot of times I like to tell my clients or whoever comes in, I say, you guys should also speak with an accountant, right? A CPA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because a lot of times the entity that you set up, right? The best entity for you, guess what, is the one that you're going to be able to take the most money out of and pay the least amount of taxes, right? So that's probably the best entity for you. Now, if you want to grow the business, be huge, you plan on bringing on money later, you plan on doing all these things, then you may need a separate structure from someone who's just starting a business with their friend. Maybe they don't want to get huge, but they want to have a decent living, and they just want to limit their liability per se. That person may want an LLC depending on the business and what they're running. Someone who intends on making the business kind of huge and doing a lot of things and bringing in money from the outside, stuff like that, they may want to set up a corporation structure.
Mm-hmm.
So some people also want to do not-for-profits, and that's a different structure as well altogether. So similar to a corporate structure, but that you're not making any money off. The corporation's not making any money off of what they're doing. So all those structures differ. As far as S corp, stuff like that, those are usually more tax designations.
Okay.
So I usually like to speak with whoever is going to be the company's CPA at the time of setting up the company to see, so that me and that person are on the same page. Just because, sometimes you set up the company, everything's going well. And then after year one, you get to the accountant and the accountant's like, well, why are you set up like this? You should be, like this to get the most savings. So
Okay.
I like to try to get an accountant on board, assuming that we can, just so that, that person can, we're both on the same page as to how the corporation should be set up, and then the company goes from there. One other thing that's important too, going back, I guess, to your first question and starting up a company, and a lot of companies don't, not a lot of companies, but a lot of the people behind the companies don't think of these things, is most people, they go and they're like, hey, we're going to start, Mills Knows Bills, right? But Mills Knows Bills need an office to operate. So Mills Knows Bills goes and she shows up to the office and she's like, hey, yeah, all right, give me here. Yeah, lease, whatever. I'll sign whatever you need, right? Because you're excited. You want to start a business. You got your Facebook open, right? And you want to put an address on your Facebook and you want to have an office and want people to come see you, right? So a lot of people don't think about all the documents that they need in order to get an office, right? You need a lease, right? You're probably going to have to guarantee the lease personally, right? So that's things that I help, my clients with, and getting office space. A lot of companies need contracts, right? If you're a gym, you should probably have a waiver, right? So someone comes, slips and falls in your gym, breaks their back, you guys are going to be limited as to the amount of liability that you can have in that scenario. If you're a company that, does marketing, for instance, and you're signing long-term contracts with people, you probably want a pretty decent contract, right? That's going to delineate a lot of different scenarios that can happen between you and your clients, and how you can get out of those contracts, how they can get out of the contracts. Um, some people operate solely on an invoice, kind of basis. Um, that somebody calls in and says, hey, I need, 25 shirts printed tomorrow. And you go, okay, here's the invoice, approve it, don't approve it, right? And so a lot of people think that, oh, it's just an invoice, I can make it on, Excel, and no big deal. But the problem becomes when you have people, it's a $2,000 order, let's say. What do you do when they don't pay, the $2,000, right? It's like, are you going to go hire an attorney for $2,000? But the attorney's probably going to cost you more than $2,000 to try to go find it, right? So a lot of people in the invoice world, what we call it, they don't think of things like that. And there's little things that you can put on your invoice, that will allow you to get attorney's fees. So now you'll be more attractive when you go to an attorney to try to get that little measly $2,000, right? Because the attorney can be like, hey, well, I can also go after the fees for you, right? So now you're not paying me to try to go get you money that when you pay me, you're gonna have zero at the end. Right now, it's a scenario where it's more likely that we can go get you what you're owed and get our attorney's fees. So all those contracts like that are important. Leases is honestly a big one. A lot of people don't think about the lease. They just sign it because they're like, oh man, it's a lease, we can't change anything, which a lot of these landlords are willing to change things, right? And they're willing to negotiate on certain things. People in a residential setting, it's a little less likely that, the landlord's going to negotiate a lease with you. But in a commercial setting, it's a little more, if you look around now with all the vacancies are probably going to be vacant for a while, right? So it makes a landlord more willing to negotiate with you and stuff like that. So, that's also part of the whole startup of the business. A lot of people don't think of that because they just get started and they go for it. And they're like, I don't want to spend $2,000 right now on making sure that all that stuff's right. But I guarantee you that, not setting it up right in the beginning makes it a lot more expensive later when you want to set it up and you're fixing a problem as opposed to avoiding a problem.
So it definitely sounds like a lot of this will be a case by case scenario with someone that, is starting their own business. So do you have any general advice that you can provide anyone that's watching this? Just like a, common pitfall or something like that?
Yeah, I would say, one thing that in general people, do and don't think of when they're starting the business is they don't think of those little things, like that's kind of where someone like you would probably be very beneficial to a new business owner, is like financial planning, right? The beginning of the business. Like a lot of people think, hey, let's say I'm selling a t-shirt, right? They think, hey, I'm going to sell these first 5 t-shirts, and I'm making 100% profit on the first 5 t-shirts. It's like, you guys probably should know that, like, you need to save some money, right? And do stuff right at the beginning of the company's inception, as opposed to trying to fix things when you get into a problem later.
Okay.
That's, to me, being set up the right way from the beginning and knowing, what pitfalls can come up is golden. A lot of people, and it's human nature that a lot of people start things and they're very excited to start them and they don't think of what can go wrong, right? You just don't think of it. Mm-hmm. That's why I have people come to my office all the time. They're starting a business and they leave here defeated, right? They came in excited and they leave defeated. And they're like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I want to do it anymore, like, and that's obviously not my goal, is to make them feel defeated, but my goal is to make them realize, hey, all these things can happen and I need to set you up so that you're protected when all these things can happen. Mm-hmm. And of course, at the beginning of your business, you don't want to spend that much money, but I think that spending money at the beginning of opening your business helps to save you money long-term for your business. So I think that, it's a smart thing to do, definitely. Obviously I would love for them to come to me, helps me out. But, even if you don't go to me, I would talk to some attorney and accountant, before you start. A lot of people have friends that are an attorney or an accountant that, can kind of give them basic info before they get started. Mm-hmm. But if you're dealing with, especially companies who have, a lot of contracts and long-term contracts with their clients, they got to make sure their contracts are right. Going to Google for whatever documents you need is just probably not going to cut it. You know what I mean? I've seen companies that come in with, these contracts and they're like, yeah, I need you to take a look at it. And it's like, dude, do you have a gym or are you running a dry cleaning plant? Because I can't tell with the contract that you have. You know what I mean? So they just take these random contracts here. They put their logo on. They think, oh, I'm good. And it's so, definitely getting set up right from the beginning is the way to go. And if maybe it's most companies have some capital before they start, right? That's how you start. That's how you're able to get into a lease. That's how you're able to do these things. I would say, spend a little bit less on the coffee mugs and the pens, right, to start the company, and a little more on like making sure the company's set up right from the beginning, right? The coffee mugs and the pens, they're never going to go anywhere. I promise you. They're never going to get you in trouble, right? And the person who makes them, bro, is always going to be there to make them. They're never going
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. So that would be something that I would want people to think of more when they're going to start the company is just, make sure you do it the right way, because having to fix it later is, I'm telling you, 10 times, maybe 100 times more expensive, depending
Okay.
on the scenario. But yeah, that would probably be, for starting the company, that's definitely where I would say just make sure it's set up right, and, and then you go from there.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you brought up, you know, mentioning the fact that it'd be great for someone who's looking to start a business to find someone that's in their corner, whether it's another lawyer or a CPA. But say someone watching this video doesn't have someone that they can call on, or they want another person to call on. If they wanted to reach out to you, how can they do so? What platforms are you on?
I have an Instagram, so they can message me on Instagram. They can call my office. They can email me. Whatever it is. I'm always available. Um, Email's typically the easiest and the quickest way for me to respond, because even if I'm tied up doing something else, like my email's usually up, whether it's on my computer or on my phone, like the email's usually there. So email's pretty easy. The Instagram I probably check, once a day, but it's not like my preferred method of contact. But so email or just call the office, and I'm happy to help. Anyone who comes from Mills Knows Bills gets free 30-minute consultation too.
Ooh, I'll
So
definitely.
you can throw that in. Anyone who drops your name, they get that.
Okay, I'll let them know. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.